The moment Emma looked at him with tears trembling in her eyes, Daniel felt the world slow down. She stood in the doorway of his quiet Denver apartment, her hands shaking, her voice barely holding together as she whispered, "I can't do this alone." Those words cut through every wall he had built over the years. He had seen her scared before, but never like this. Never with a fear that seemed to reach all the way to her bones. Daniel had always kept his life simple. At 42, he preferred quiet nights to chaos, long drives to crowded rooms, and carefully protected distance to anything resembling emotional risk. But Emma, 26, bright, stubborn, full of a warmth he had never been able to resist, had been the one exception he allowed himself. Their connection had grown slowly, almost accidentally, through late-night talks and shared coffees, through her laughter echoing in places he once considered silent. He never expected her to show up at his door like this. She hadn't even called. He moved closer, quiet, careful, as though any sudden movement might make her crumble. "Emma, what happened?" She tried to speak, but her breath hitched. She pressed a hand over her mouth, trying to steady herself, but tears kept slipping down her cheeks. Daniel reached out and hesitated for a moment, an old instinct to keep distance, but then he gently guided her inside. She walked past him as if her legs barely remembered how. She stood in the middle of his living room, breathing unevenly. Daniel shut the door softly behind them and watched her, unable to ignore how small she suddenly seemed. She had always carried herself with a kind of quiet strength. Seeing her like this shook him in a way he didn't quite understand. "Talk to me," he said, keeping his voice low. Emma wiped her face with the sleeve of her jacket. "I didn't know where else to go. I tried to be strong. I tried to handle everything, but," her voice cracked, "it's too much." Daniel stepped closer. "You're safe here. Just tell me." She looked up at him, really looked at him, and for a moment he felt something heavy settle in his chest, something that felt too close to the truth he had avoided for months. She trusted him, maybe more than she trusted anyone. "My dad collapsed this morning," she finally whispered. "He's in the ICU. They don't know what's wrong yet." Daniel felt a jolt of shock. He had met her father once, a kind, soft-spoken mechanic who adored his daughter. Emma continued, struggling through every sentence. "I can't focus. I can't think straight. My mom's a mess. My brother's out of state. I'm trying to hold everyone together, but I'm scared, Daniel. I'm really scared." As she spoke, her voice kept breaking, as though the fear had been building for hours and finally found its way out. Daniel didn't think. He pulled her into his arms, and this time he didn't stop himself. She clung to him instantly, gripping the back of his shirt, burying her face against him like she had been holding everything in until that moment. He closed his eyes and held her tighter. "It's all right," he murmured. "I'm here. You don't have to do any of this alone." She trembled against him, pressing closer, and he could feel her pain like it was something physical traveling between them. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The only sound in the room was her soft, uneven breathing and the storm she was trying so hard to quiet. When she finally pulled back slightly, her fingers lingered on his chest, as if she wasn't sure she wanted to let go. "Will you come with me?" she asked. "To the hospital?" There were 1,000 reasons he should have hesitated, reasons tied to the age between them, to the boundaries he tried to keep, to the feelings he was afraid to name. But none of them mattered now. "Of course," he said, and as she nodded, wiping her cheeks, Daniel knew that this moment would change everything between them. The drive to the hospital felt longer than it should have, even though it was only 20 minutes across Denver. The late evening sky had turned a deep blue, the kind that usually calmed Daniel after long days. But tonight, the quiet inside the car was thick, heavy, filled with everything Emma wasn't saying. She sat beside him, her hands clasped so tightly in her lap that her knuckles had turned white. Every few minutes, she took in a sharp breath, as if forcing herself not to fall apart. Daniel kept glancing at her, trying to read her expression, trying to offer something more than silence. But she looked straight ahead, lost in the kind of fear that made words feel fragile. When they pulled into the hospital parking lot, the fluorescent lights cast a cold glow over the pavement. Emma exhaled shakily, almost as if she had been holding her breath the entire way. Daniel turned off the engine and waited a moment. He didn't want to rush her. "You ready?" he asked gently. "No," she whispered, "but I don't have a choice." He got out and walked around to her side. When she stepped out, she wobbled slightly. Without thinking, he reached for her hand. She hesitated for just a moment and then let her fingers slide into his. Her grip was tight. His hand closed around hers, steady, reassuring. Inside the hospital, the sharp smell of antiseptic filled the air. The bright lights, the echo of hurried footsteps, the quiet murmur of families waiting. It all pressed in on her at once. Her breathing started to quicken. Daniel leaned close. "I've got you. Stay with me." She nodded weakly, but she didn't let go of his hand. They reached the ICU waiting area where Emma's mother sat hunched over on a chair, staring at a cup of untouched coffee. When she saw Emma, she stood up instantly. Her face looked drawn, tired, and streaked from crying. Emma moved straight into her mother's arms, and Daniel stepped back slightly, giving them space. "He's stable for now," her mother said, voice trembling. "But they still don't know what caused it. They're running more tests." Emma closed her eyes as if every sentence hurt. Daniel stood quietly nearby, not wanting to intrude, but Emma's mother gave him a grateful, tired look. "Thank you for coming with her," she said softly. "I'm glad she wasn't alone," he replied. As the hours dragged on, Emma never moved far from Daniel. Whenever a doctor came in with an update, she reached for him first. Whenever her voice shook, it was his steady presence she leaned toward. The closeness between them grew without either of them meaning for it to happen. Around midnight, Emma finally stepped outside to get some air. Daniel followed her, keeping a few steps behind in case she needed space. She walked toward a dim corner of the courtyard, where the cold night wrapped around them. When she finally stopped, her shoulders sank. "He's all I have," she said quietly. "He taught me how to fix a flat tire. He taught me how to stand up for myself. I can't imagine losing him." Daniel moved closer. "You're not losing him. Not tonight. And not without a fight." She looked up at him then, her eyes shining with tears. "I'm trying to hold myself together, but every time the doctor walks in, I feel like I'm about to fall apart." "You don't have to be strong every second," he said. "You don't owe anyone that." He expected her to look away, to brush it off, to pretend she was fine. Instead, she stepped closer. The night air felt colder around them. Her voice trembled. "Daniel, I don't know why, but when you're here, I feel like I can breathe." His heartbeat thudded harder than it should have. He had spent months building boundaries, telling himself they were just friends, that she deserved someone her age, someone less guarded. But seeing her like this, hurting, scared, trusting him more than anyone, made every one of those boundaries feel flimsy. Emma followed the doctor back into the ICU, Daniel close behind her, his hand brushing hers for support. The waiting area had emptied, leaving an almost surreal silence that made every footstep echo. Her heart pounded, and Daniel could feel it through the subtle squeeze of her hand. She wanted to be brave, to hold herself together, but the fear, the uncertainty, the love she felt for her father, and the growing storm of feelings for Daniel all collided inside her. The doctor stopped in front of her father's bed. He looked pale, hooked up to monitors, his chest rising slowly under the rhythmic beep of the machines. He opened his eyes weakly, and a faint smile appeared when he saw Emma. "Hey, Pumpkin," he rasped. Emma rushed to his side, gripping his hand. "Dad, you scared me." Her voice broke, and Daniel placed a reassuring hand on her back, letting her lean on him as she tried to stay strong. "He's stable now," the doctor said. "We found the problem. It's serious, but treatable." He's lucky you got here quickly. Emma exhaled, relief washing over her like a wave. She looked up at Daniel, tears still in her eyes, and he smiled gently. See? You didn't have to do this alone. She shook her head slightly, trying to hold back new tears. No, but I couldn't have handled it without you. I don't even know how to thank you. Daniel shrugged, a small, shy smile tugging at his lips. You don't have to. Just let me be here, that's enough. She looked at him then, really looked, and something unspoken passed between them. The hospital's harsh lights faded in her vision as all she could see was him. The man who had stayed, who had held her hand when her world felt like it was collapsing. I've been so afraid, she admitted softly. Afraid of losing my dad. Afraid of being alone. Afraid of feeling this, of feeling you. Her voice barely rose above a whisper, but Daniel caught every word. He stepped closer, their foreheads almost touching. You don't have to. Just let me be here, that's enough. She looked at him then, really looked, and something unspoken passed between them. The hospital's harsh lights faded in her vision as all she could see was him. The man who had stayed, who had held her hand when her world felt like it was collapsing. I've been so afraid, she admitted softly. Afraid of losing my dad. Afraid of being alone. Afraid of feeling this, of feeling you. Her voice barely rose above a whisper, but Daniel caught every word. He stepped closer, their foreheads almost touching. Emma, I've tried to keep my distance. I told myself it was safer. But seeing you like this, seeing you need someone, I realized I don't want to be apart from you. Her breath hitched. Daniel. He gently cupped her face, brushing a tear from her cheek. I don't care about the age, about the risks. I care about you. For a long moment, the world outside the ICU ceased to exist. Her chest tightened, her heart racing, as if it could barely hold everything she felt. Then, without thinking, she leaned in, resting her forehead against his. It was soft, tentative, yet charged with all the emotion they had kept buried for months. I was so scared, but now, she whispered, I think I'm ready to let someone in. Even if it's you. Daniel closed the distance fully, their lips meeting in a gentle, lingering kiss that spoke of comfort, trust, and something far deeper than either had expected. It was not rushed, not desperate. It was the quiet promise of being there for each other, through fear, through heartbreak, and through every uncertainty life could throw at them. When they finally pulled back, Emma rested her head on his shoulder. Her father's monitors beeped steadily, the soft hum of the hospital around them a reminder that life went on. But for the first time that night, hope and love felt possible. I don't want to be alone ever again, she admitted quietly. You won't be, Daniel promised, tightening his.